Oh, wait, no, hold on.
We
hold
do
on.
need to do
Right,
that
sorry.
because of Zoom.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. It's not even been that long since the last recording, and I've already forgotten how we do things.
And you mock me
okay.
for asking if it's 48k every episode.
Point taken. Okay, world clock time and date will go at do you want to go at 10 past?
Yeah, on 10.
Okay, so today is going to be book review, Artifexian Book Club Corner. We are going to review Jade City by Fonda Lee. But first, I got a couple of points of follow-up, Bill, if that's okay.
Sure, I'll allow it.
We'll put a very clear sort of like spoilers incoming at the moment which we start reviewing Jade City. So you'll know when to dip out if you haven't already read the book. All right? First point of follow-up. This comes from like ages and ages ago, Bill. I'd mentioned about how I dislike when shows that are set in like Viking times, for example, have a bunch of people speaking in RP. Remember that?
Yes.
I can't remember the exact context of why that came up, and I think I made a point that wouldn't it be cool if everyone just spoke Old English. That would be kind of dope. And I started watching the show Vikings like 2 or 3 nights ago.
Okay, yeah.
It does what I wanted it to do. And I was flabbergasted. I was like, this is amazing.
Didn't I recommend that at the time?
I don't remember. It was so long ago. But just to, I suppose, put it on air, there's a point in the show where the Vikings come and raid the monastery at Lindisfarne.
Yeah.
These aren't crazy spoilers, folks, and the show has been out for years anyway, so...
And that raid happened like 1100 years ago, so get over it.
Sure. And the monks are speaking in what I don't know if it's Old English or Middle English, but not like modern English. And they do that for a couple of sentences to kind of get our brains into the mood, and then they switch into, speaking like modern humans. And it's great. It's so cool. And they treat Old/Middle English there just like a conlang is treated in a work of fiction. We get a couple of lines in the conlang to adjust ourselves and then back to speaking English. Wonderful. Highly recommend. That is what more shows should do. It adds so much flavor. I love it.
Yeah, I thought that worked well. That's
the first point of follow-up. Second point of follow-up is Bank of Artifexia, the triumphant return. ASMR, everyone. So we got a letter from Amber, and this isn't too long, so I'll just read the whole shebang. I might omit bits for brevity, but it's not too bad. Hello, Edgar and Bill. My name is Amber. I am a game developer from the US. I've been listening to the podcast since the beginning, but tend to be rather quiet online. I discovered Artifexian when I was about 16, when I got interested in world building for D&D and writing. I am now 24. Again, that's 8 years.
Yeah.
Just what even is time? Anyways, the story behind this letter: while cleaning out my closet, I found this Georgian note left over from when I visited the Republic of Georgia a while ago. I've been meaning to send it to you for a while, but couldn't find it for the life of me, and figured I had perhaps misplaced it. Coming across it again, I jumped at the chance to submit it to the Bank of Artifexia. I stayed in Tbilisi while there, and would love to visit it again someday, should the world ever choose to calm down. Georgian cuisine is wonderful. Dumplings, shawarma, bread with beans and or cheese. Also, they have licorice flavoured soda. It's produced with tarragon, which turns out to have a strong flavour of anise. I'm not quite the connoisseur of licorice that Edgar is. No one is, Amber. But I do enjoy it and thought you might appreciate that fact. It might sound like an odd form for that flavour to take, but I can assure you it was delicious. Highly recommend. While writing this, I got idly curious if I can buy some now. Wasn't able to last time I checked. Looks like they are still not exporting. However, I did find a recipe for Georgian tarragon soda, which I may try. I don't really have much in the way of questions for you either. I just love what you both do and look forward to more years of podcasts, videos, and world building. And maybe some world Edgaring too. The new series shows so much promise. Cheers, Amber. That was a lovely letter. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much, Amber. Yeah, that's lovely.
So, points on this. Just one, real quick. Georgia. We looked before the world came to an end with the pandemic. There, myself and the captain looked at holidaying in Georgia. That country looks baller, just absolute baller. I would highly recommend anyone, if they're looking for places to go, to look into Georgia. It is really great. The other thing is world Edgaring. I just want to address this real quick. I kind of have like hubristic notions of doing some world Edgaring here, as in build the setting on the channel and then write about it here. But like, I am such a bad writer that it's just not going to fly. The stories are going to be stupid and not well constructed. So I would love to. I just amn't skilled to be able to do that. Unfortunately, it's not my bag. And then the other thing is the Georgian note. I think we do not have any Georgia in the Bank of Artifexia. This is 20. What is it? 20. What's the unit of currency?
Larry.
Georgian Larry. So 20 Georgian Larry equates to €6.94. And that is $7.55 US. And sure, we may as well give it in Great British Sterling. Great British Sterling? Sure. That's exactly what that currency is called.
Close enough.
I know, it's a joke. Where's United Kingdom? Where's the UK? Ugh.
It's there between France and Ireland.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Do you know, I learned something mad about the UK.
Oh, yes?
Great Britain. Never realised this. It's like it comes from Brittany. Like great as in the bigger part of it. Mental.
Yeah, it's the same root, yeah. And it's like Brythonic was the people.
I had absolutely no idea. That was mad. And where is the bloody Jesus? Where is England here? Come on. Okay, I'm losing my mind. Okay, hold on. 20 Georgian
Larry is £6.07.
Thank you very much. I couldn't find the list. I'm blind. Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Amber. And also just to note, like, you don't feel the need to have to write questions to us in letters. I just really enjoy getting physical mail, and hearing about our listeners. So they don't have to come with questions. But yeah, I will add that to the Bank of Artifexia, and the money map should be on screen right now.
That is a lovely letter. Thank you very much, Amber. I had Georgian food recently.
You had Georgian food recently?
Yeah, for the
Why?
first time. Well, I was in a Georgian restaurant, so it seemed the polite thing to do.
You land there and you go, "Giz a burger, please. I want a Mackie D's."
Yeah, so I was in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, and while I was there, I went to a Georgian restaurant, and Georgian food is deadly.
Oh my God, I totally forgot. How was Berlin?
Berlin was good.
Any
Berlin
stories?
Was good. I went
Any
to
news?
The Spy Museum, and I went to the Computer Game Museum. This wasn't my first time in Berlin, so I didn't ignore going to the Reichstag and everything in favor of doing those. But I went to the Computer Game Museum and the Spy Museum, and I went to the Stasi Museum, and I went to the theater, and I ate Georgian food, and I went to Tajikistani tea house and had some Russian food. And yeah, overall, Berlin, good city. Recommend.
Bill and is going to museums. Do you know, remember we had ages ago a discussion about how I dislike museums?
Yeah.
I've tried to, because whenever I have an opinion and it's met with hostility, I try and take a step back and be like, maybe my opinions are wrong. And I try and re-examine them. So I can't remember when it was, just after we had that discussion about how museums are crap, in my opinion. I think I was in Edinburgh or something, and I decided I'll go to a museum. And I gave it my best shot, and I'm just like, it's just so dull. It's so dull. It's just clutter everywhere, and you don't learn anything. I really can't get on board museums.
I do learn things personally.
I don't, because there's only a little plaque or whatever in front of an exhibition that has a very limited amount of information. Whereas it'd be if I wanted to learn about a woolly mammoth or whatever, go to Wikipedia, and there's a wall of text which hopefully is cited well, that you can expand upon your reading there. But when you're just walking through a museum, I get very little info, and I don't feel amazed by seeing stuff. So like, so I don't get amazed at seeing a replica woolly mammal there. I'm kind of like, cool. Someone made a very large toy. That doesn't like get my gears going. So for me, I tried so hard.
That's fine. It's incomprehensible to me, but it's fine. Like I don't say that as a judgment thing. It's just cool.
Yeah, it's just not the way your brain is wired, so you can't understand. And I find your position to be incomprehensible. I'm just kind of like, how does he enjoy, like, how long do you spend in a museum, Bill, when you go to a museum?
I mean, it depends on the size of the museum, depends on a lot of factors. I spent about maybe 2.5 hours in the Stasi Museum.
Wow.
Now, it was very dense, and I was definitely flagging by the end of it. But yeah, it was about that.
Wow. God, I could never fathom doing that. You and I are very different people.
Just built different.
Now, anyhow, so that is Georgian food. Follow-up done.
Yes.
So I would like to talk, final bit of follow-up, I want to talk about Avatar. Is that okay with you, Bill?
I suppose.
Now, I hate to bring this up, but I'd like to talk about the robot discussion again. The robot discussion was kind of permeated everything with regards to the last episode. Upon reflection, I'd like to tell you where I'm at here at the moment. We don't need to go into a big conversation about this, otherwise it probably will be an hour of us debating. I just want to tell you where I'm at, and we'll move on from there. First of all, I want to apologize because I quickly derailed the discussion not into a discussion about the morphology of machines, but into a discussion about like the difference between specialist and generalist robots. I listened back and I dropped like a couple of examples of specialist robots, and that completely derailed the whole thing. And the two of us were kind of talking over one another. You were making one point and I was addressing it with a completely unrelated point. And that didn't help the sort of cohesion of that section. So upon reflection, my stance, I am unmoved. I try to be moved by people commenting to Reddit and listening back to your words, but I am unmoved. My stance is that whether it be a specialist or a generalist robot, I find the assumption that the humanoid form is optimal for that robot to take to be a flawed one. My point is not that humanoid robots don't function or don't work. Like, we have clear counterexamples to that. But I don't think they are the only form robots can take. And I think you can have both specialist and generalist robots that look nothing like a human, that perform both specialized and generalist tasks equally as well, if not better. That's my position. Again, I tried listening to the arguments, and they all just didn't do it for me, unfortunately. I'm probably wrong about these things. I'm often wrong about these things, but I've failed to become swayed. The two things I want to flag as being kind of like points that I do agree on is a few people mentioned the psychological or the marketing aspect of why robots may be built humanoid, because we can identify more with them. They look more friendly. They don't look like hell machines or whatever. And that I totally get. Like the building of a robot that looks like us, so we can go, oh, it looks cute, and we can feel more comfortable with it being in our homes or whatever. Totally get that. Like I am total agreeance with that. Absolutely. And also someone, again, I can't remember the name, and I think it was a couple of people as well, pointed out that I'm not really taking into account human pattern recognition, and that even if some work of sci-fi were to present on screen a robot that wasn't based on a human or based on a crab, to use the Avatar examples, our brains would still go, yeah, it kind of looks like a dog or whatever, even though it's not. And I think one person brought up the example of Spot from Boston Dynamics, when they're like, everyone refers to it as a dog, but really there's not really anything dog-like about it. Like, it has 4 legs, which loads of animals
It's a quadruped. That's it.
It's a quadruped, and it also has an arm coming out of its back, so it's not dog-like at all, but we just project and go, it's a dog. And I totally get that as well. And I suppose, just to tie it back to like what I would like robots to appear like on screen, it would be kind of cool if it was less of like, that is just a human except made from machine, and more of a sort of like, it's kind of like if you imagine a mix between a human and an octopus, something like that, where it's not where our human pattern recognition doesn't easily pigeonhole it into one form. It's kind of hard to define. I think that would look really cool, as opposed to just robots that are like straight human, straight crab, straight whatever. Do you know what I mean? A little bit more weird, I guess. I just want weirder robots. And I believe that weirder robots can exist and perform any of the functions that we would require robots to perform. So that's my point. If you want to retort, you totally can, but I just wanted to get that on record.
I want to make it clear that I never said anything to the effect that humanoid robots would be optimal.
Sure.
My point was that there is utility to starting there, because you have a proven shape that can do those things. So it makes sense. You can cut out like time trying to find what shape can do it, because we know that this one can. So that was never that this is optimal or that it is necessarily the best. It was just like, it's not totally stupid to start there for a lot of things.
Sure.
As regards the marketing aspect and the pattern recognition, I actually have two counterexamples. People will bond with anything. Humans, we love to pack bond with stuff. Like people like love their plants and even inanimate objects, and like they love any pet that they have, you know. And people love Roombas.
They do, yeah.
People love people treat Roombas like their pets sometimes. So I'd be interested in like the bonding with non-humanoid robots a bit more. There probably is some kind of thing to it being human shaped, that it's friendlier or whatever, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. And
sure.
Yeah, like, I mean, you know, robots that currently exist, you know, bomb disposal robots, you know, they're not robots, they're controlled units, but like, you know what I mean? They're not humanoid at all. So, you know, that is an example of a specialized one. Yeah, but like my point was never it is the only shape that makes sense, or it is the best shape that makes sense. My point was that it isn't necessarily stupid.
Sure. I'm without starting the debate again, I think the thing I wanted to push back on there, and hopefully I can put it in better words this time around, is that my take was that it perhaps isn't such a wonderful starting point, because what works for biology may not necessarily work for machines. Now, I'm not an engineer, so that statement could be stupid. That's just how I feel about it. So I think there's where you and I disagreed a little bit, and then it spiraled into like a chaotic mess of like talking over one another. And yeah, which is fine. Like, we can disagree. We disagree on things loads of times, like robots and museums and the whole shebang. So it's cool. We kept it simple, which was the main thing. So yeah, that was a robot follow-up from Avatar. One quick point that's popped in my head that wasn't in the show notes, but it'll take 2 seconds, is that most people, I found it interesting that most people were like us. We were like, the film was pretty meh. And there was we had a good bit of banter, like, you know, slagging the film and things like that. There was one person who absolutely adored the film, and they didn't give reasons. And I can't remember who you are, Bill. If you could find them, they're on the Reddit, and we could drop their name.
Nifotog 1999.
What's that again?
Nifotog 1999.
Nifotog 1999. Please leave your reasons. I am so interested in hearing, because again, I felt like everyone was on the same page. That was just kind of like meh. It was fine. I really want to hear what did it for you with this movie. Really, really want to hear it. So that was one thing, and the final thing on Avatar was we got a message from Copy Planet on YouTube. A quote: "The thing with the eclipses, because we talked about eclipses, is that they're sort of a daily occurrence. Pandora seems to be tidally locked, but not really. It's never really explained, and really weird to me." This is interesting, because if there are eclipses on Pandora, which there seem to be, we would expect them to be a daily occurrence, because the day of the moon, a day on that moon, is defined by its orbit around the planet. So you would have a daily occurrence. Pandora seems to be tidally locked, but not really. I don't know where this commenter is getting that information from. I'm really intrigued if there's other info on the like physical state of Pandora, maybe in some supplementary material that I have not come across. If there is, please let me know. I suppose the only thing I'll say here is that you can have non-tidally locked or quasi-tidally locked moons of gas giants. Now, I'd expect Pandora, being a major moon, to be fully tidally locked, but it's not like beyond the realms of possibility that it lies at a distance from its gas giant parent, such that it hasn't become fully locked yet. Kind of like Mercury. Mercury isn't really like fully locked, but it's in a quasi-locked state, if I recall correctly. So that's totally a thing that can happen. And it's not really that weird. But I am intrigued that Pandora seems to be tidally locked, but not really. I want to know where that information is coming from. If there is supplemental reading, someone send it to me. I want to read about it. And that, my friend, is Avatar follow-up done.
Would you like to know of a weird robot in fiction?
Sure. We'll go back to the robots.
It just occurred to me. If you Google robot interstellar.
The robot interstellar.
It's called the TARS robot.
Oh, God, yeah, I remember that is a weird robot, isn't it?
Now, I only saw the second half of that movie, and I thought it was very, very stupid.
Wait, why did you only see the second half? What the hell?
Because I came in and turned on the TV, and the second it was halfway through.
Oh, wow. You sat and watched the entirety of the second half?
Not kind of, like I was with friends, and it was just like something on in the background.
Cool, okay.
Didn't convince me that I want to watch the rest of it. But I was taken with that robot because I had like, not exactly a fever dream or a hallucination, but I had this like really strong dream image of a robot quite similar in design to that when I was a small child. And it really kind of freaked me out to see it represented then in a film from like 20 years later.
I gotta say, this robot looks stupid.
I mean, I get it. Yeah, I could see flaws in it, but it's one that's very different to human shape. So,
for excuse me, for anyone who doesn't know this robot, if you imagine like a Jenga tower, glued together and put on its side, and like with all the bits at various different angles, that's it walking. It's 4 Jenga tower slabs connected in the middle and with some computer screens on it. It's very, very strange. It has no wheels, no feet, no nothing. That is an odd robot. It looks a bit like a modern fridge with stilts. Like there's 2 stilts on either side, and the middle portion's like a modern fridge. That's a very odd robot. Anyhow. So wait, hold on. Is that follow-up done now?
I think so.
Okay. This isn't follow-up. This is PSA for upcoming podcasts. Not in the near future, but in the like medium-term future, because we'd like to get back to doing more standard Artifexing episodes. It's been a while. In the medium-term future, perhaps a couple of months away, we are going to review another book, and we are going to review The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. I'll leave a link in the show notes. As a sort of teaser, it's an epic fantasy set in an India-inspired world, which I think is pretty novel. I've not come across many of them, and I think that might be a cool one to review and talk about the world building in it. So, The Jasmine Throne, Tasha Suri, links in the description. Pick up a copy, give it a read, and we'll review it at some stage in the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Cool.
All right, let's talk some Jade City. Jade City by Fondly. As always, I think the format here should be we give our overall thoughts, whether we liked it or whether we hated it, and use that as a way to frame the ensuing discussion. So overall thoughts, summary of what went on, and then we get into what we liked and disliked. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Bill, what did you think? Overall, good book, bad book, did you enjoy?
I thought it was a great book. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, you thought it was a great book?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Wow. Good. I am similar. I think it was wonderful, like really wonderful. And I've tried my best to come up with like criticisms of the book. And I'm just like, I don't really have much. Like, it's just a really, really fun book. So good. We both enjoyed it. Excellent. Do you want to give a quick plot rundown? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, I always do this wrong when you ask me to do this.
I know. That's why I keep asking you. It's great.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a very. No, this isn't so much a plot rundown as kind of a premise rundown.
Sure.
All great literature asks a question, right?
Right.
And the question posed by Jade City is, what if there were kung fu wizards? And the answer given in Jade City is, if there were kung fu wizards, they would be the mafia.
That is... I wouldn't call that a summary, but that is great.
That's the premise.
That's my sort of premise was it's Wuxia Godfather.
Yeah, 100%. That's 100%. Absolutely it.
To do a bit more of a summary, just to entice people to read this book had they not already read this book.
Spoilers from this point, by the way.
Yeah, we forgot to do spoilers. I'm so sorry. Spoilers from this point on. If you haven't read the book, do not listen any further. There'll be no content other than Jade City beyond this point. Stop now, read the book, come back. So as a summary, we have this setting, the island of Keikon, where the majority of the action takes place. On this island, there is a city called Janlun. It is, I think, roughly modeled off like Hong Kong. It has Hong Kong sort of vibes to it. This city is quasi controlled by a bunch of these mafiosa style clans, who are basically like kung fu wizards fueled by the power of jade. Like, just like IRL, the stone jade imbues a certain demographic of people with like magic powers, and they use this to kind of as a sort of weapon to conduct their mafiosa style business. The book is basically it goes through the story of what happens when the balance of power on this island between these mafia gangs begins to tip, and we see the island descend into warfare, clan-based warfare, and at the end there is like a reprieve. The protagonist clan, the No Peak clan, gains an important strategic victory by defeating a chap called Gaunt Ash, a high-ranking member of the other big clan, the Mountain Clan, and that kind of puts the war on hold and sets up the second book, which is Jade War, where things probably go all mental. So that's kind of the plot. Mafia style clan warfare with magical jade energy. And we see the beginnings of a full-on war in this book. Does that sound like a decent-ish summary?
That's pretty much it, yeah.
Okay. So, talk to me. What did we like about this, Bill?
Let me open my notes here. It was very... the story was great, right? It was like a really good version of the kind of the classic... Godfather type story of trying to deal with the family, and for example, Shay is one of the characters in it, and she's a member of the kind of the lead family within the No Peak clan, and she tries to distance herself from her family's activities but can't escape, which is essentially the same as Michael in The Godfather.
I'll take your word for that. I have not again seen The Godfather, so sure.
I haven't seen The Godfather.
I have not seen The Godfather. I'm not a fan of mafia-style content. Doesn't do it for me.
Okay.
This did for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've no compulsion to watch Sopranos, really, or The Godfather, any of that.
Interesting. Yeah, so essentially she's trying to remove herself from the family and their activities and can't escape it. Events conspire to draw her back in. The world building in it is, without like going too much into the world building, it's clear that there is a lot of depth to the world building.
Yeah. Agree.
One of the things that made this obvious to me is, so the Jade is what gives people their powers, and we see that primarily in the form of combat and stuff, that the clans use it to fight, and it heightens their perception and things. But there's also a religion that's reliant upon it. There's also mentioned that there's doctors that are jaded, and they use that in their medicine. And it doesn't belabor the point. It doesn't make you read loads about what the doctors do, or what the priests who are jaded do. But it is there, and it is present, and it is clearly a different thing. So Jade doesn't just exist in this society and have this one effect. There's it has trickled down. It has spread to a lot of areas of the world building.
If I may jump in here,
absolutely.
I think, and further, like Jade also, there's other nations mentioned in the book, the Hispanians and the Egotanians. Jade also affects them. So Jade works as a commodity on the global scale as well, and like plays with their culture, etc. And I think as well, what was the other thing I was going to say about the Jade that you just said? On the world building, there's also a good deal of like religion building done in the book as well, through little interludes that help tie into the story as well. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, we're not belabored and have to read a ton of exposition on what this world is. It just feels very lived in and very real. Given the way that Lee sets it up, and I think it was good. It was really good.
And even besides the Jade, there's a lot of mention of things like makes of cars and stuff during the book, and it doesn't spend too long trying to explain what those are. It's just like the Duchessa pulled up on the curb, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a car. We get that it's a car. It doesn't belabor the point and make sure we know what that is or its specifications or anything. Which that's a thing that I always appreciate. It feels more real, because if I was reading The Godfather, it's not going to go into a load of detail explaining what car they're driving and what that is, because we know what it is. So kind of trust us a little.
And the whole book is littered with that. Like, it popped in my mind. There's one part where Shay, again, a prominent member of our protagonist No Peak clan, is coming home to Janloon, the city, and she's in a taxi, and I think the taxi driver makes some comment on like Hispanian rave music and how he dislikes it. Or she makes that comment, I can't remember. And it's just left there that there's like, oh, okay, so in this city, there's like a bunch of different musical traditions going on. People listen to like Janloon folk and Hispanian rave music. And
opera.
There's opera mentioned as well. And it's just, and again, it's not belabored. It's just dropped there, and it just feels very lived in. I really enjoy it.
If I was to have a criticism, I felt that sometimes certain things were over-explained. Like in conversations between characters, someone would say something and then the narration would explain the significance of that statement. And that annoyed me a little. Just kind of, I would, felt you could trust us to understand that, or to figure that out for ourselves. Or for example, there's a scene where Lan, who's at the start, he's the head of the No Peak clan. He's the pillar, the leader of the No Peak clan. He's been injured and has gotten a load of extra jade, and he's struggling to physically manage his jade, and he's taking a drug to help him with it, and he begins acting really erratically, and it was very clear that this was because of the jade and because of the drugs he was on, but the narration had to explain that to us, the narration felt it had to explain that to us, and it didn't. It was just like, no, trust me, we got it. We got what's going on.
Yeah.
That would be my main criticism.
I can't say, I recognize this, and upon reflection, I remember reading that, but I can't say it was a problem for me as reading through it. And I think that probably, I found this book extremely easy to read. Like, it was really digestible. You could really chew through it. And maybe that was part of it, that like, it didn't really require me to pay too much attention because, again, certain important things were very clearly marked as being important. So I can kind of like do other things while listening to the audiobook and not lose what's going on and stuff. So I guess I didn't see that as a bad point per se in the way I consumed the book. I should say at this stage, just to keep everyone orientated, we should probably just outline who these characters are. Lan is, like Bill said, the head of our protagonist No Peak clan. His
he's
role,
the godfather of the clan.
He's the god. Well, would he be the godfather? Surely his grandfather would be the godfather. No.
Oh no! Hold on. What's the name? Is it the boss? Hold on. What's the structure of a mafia family?
I have no idea. While you're looking up, Lan is the head honcho. He's called the pillar of the clan. That is the formal name for his role. His brother Hilo is the horn of the clan, which is kind of like, I guess, like he operates the military ring of the clan. He orders a bunch of his thugs around the place and gets them to do all the stuff that mafia people do. And then Shay starts off in the book, as Bill mentioned, she's the sister. She wants to distance herself, but after a while she can't anymore, and she becomes what's known as a weatherman. And a weatherman, again, I don't know about the lore of mafia stuff, so I might be wrong here, but it feels very much like a sort of the intelligence wing of the clan. Like it's her job to like find out what's going on and who knows what, and keep eyes and ears out, etc.
And also the legitimate business and political side of their things, because I suppose the main difference with a mafia style organization is that it is a legitimate organization and it operates publicly. In some ways it's like a political party as well. But I mean the analog's very clear. So so the pillar is effectively the boss. The weatherman is the consigliere, and the horn is the underboss. And underneath the horn we have fists who control fingers. So fingers are like the street level operatives. The fists are their sergeants, and they report to the horn. So that's like soldiers and capos, and then the horn being the underboss. And
I really enjoy these terms because, like, I know it's clearly setting up an idea that the clan is like an entity on itself, and all these terms are, barring pillar, which is kind of just a euphemism for spine, are anatomical terms. So like the clan is a body, it operates as a whole. Like these are all like elements within the greater whole, and I really enjoy that. Fists, fingers, horn, pillar, aka spine. I think that's a really cool there's cool symbolism going on there. And also, just really quickly, I'm going to steal pillar as an honorific. To be, if I ever want to conlang and build an honorific, I'm going to take pillar, because I think that's great. The idea that the pillar is, you are upright, you are sturdy, you are reliable, you're an honorable member of society. If you're a pillar, like, I am stealing that and putting it into a conlang at some stage. It's really cool. So those are the three characters. There's obviously ancillary characters around that. And we have the same roles fulfilled in the antagonist clan, the Mountain Clan. We have a pillar there, a horn, fists, fingers, etc. Yeah. So each of these clans have that. And we also as well have like many smaller clans. Like by far and away in Janloon, the Mountain Clan is the biggest. Then comes No Peak. And then everyone else is just like, other on the pie chart. But there's loads of other ones involved there. Which again adds a bit of depth, but it's never enumerated, the amount of clans or who they are and what they do or whatever. It's just, we're let know that this world runs deep, and that's cool. Yeah. To be a proper member of the clan, you need to be jaded. So you need to be someone who can use jade. And the way to become that is by attending schools that teach in the 6 jade disciplines, which are strength, steel, perception, lightness, deflection, and channeling. And they're fairly self-explanatory for the most part. Strength gives you physical strength. Steel makes you more impervious to harm. Perception heightens your perception. Lightness is like doing the wushu stuff of being able to run up along tree branches and jump very high and things. Deflection is kinetically deflecting things, and channeling is like interacting with life force.
So you can use it to harm or to heal. And so you progress through the Jade disciplines in a school and then become a member of a clan. But there is also a black market underneath of criminals who can't do that, or who didn't have access to those schools and still want Jade. And that's actually how the story kind of begins. It's the first scene, and it kicks off a lot of the events. Two young fellas trying to steal some Jade for themselves. So again, that's another example of the depth. Like, this exists. This is the system as we have set it up in the clans, but obviously it's going to have effects outside of that. There are other people who are going to want to have access to that power that don't have access to the structure.
Yeah, you're dead right. And there's things like we hear about people panning for Jade because it's mined in the mountains. And like the runoff, people will like try and scramble for it to try and eke out a bit of money out of this, or status or power or whatever. And then as well, there also is a thing about who can be jaded, because I'm going to get this wrong because I don't really remember. But I think the original people of the island, like the Aboriginal people, they are immune to Jade. The Abuke. They're immune to Jade. So like if they were to wear these stones, they would not gain any magical powers. All the foreigners, like the Espenians and Egotanians, are also immune to Jade, I think.
No.
And are they sensitive to Jade?
Yeah, they're sensitive, but not as it's not as effective for them as it is for the Kekanese.
Right, and the Kekanese, they are like mixed race Abuke and foreign
Shatari.
invaders. Shatari, that's it.
Shatari.
And then they possess the right biology or whatever to be able to like truly harness the Jade. So you have a whole and then you also have within the Kekanese people, the people who should be prime candidates to use a Jade, you have just like random mutations occur in the population, and certain people are born as what's known as stone eyes. So they possess all the genetics to be able to wield Jade, but for whatever reason they're just born without that skill, and they're called stone eyes. So you have a whole bunch of different levels of like magic wielding going on, depending on race and genetics and things like that, which I think was really cool. And again, really, really in depth and not belabored. So I enjoyed that.
I thought it was, again, the fact that it went into that ethnic history, that the Kekanese, who are the dominant race of Kekon, aren't actually the Aboriginal people of there. They've been there for 500 or 600 years or whatever. But it gives like that kind of depth to history that felt very real. And also the whole thing about the Abuke, or the people who actually mine the Jade, because they're the only ones who can safely work with it. So all power in this is based on the exploitation of the labor of an ethnic underclass. Just it's nice to see things like that being acknowledged in fantasy fiction.
Yeah, for sure.
The realism of that.
For sure. Another thing I really enjoyed as well, in contrast to a lot of other fantasy fictions, is just how kind of like small the world is. Like really, the story just revolves around one city. And that's it. Like it's instead of like having continent spanning adventures, you're spanning districts in a city. And that was kind of a cool vibe to get into. And it's amazing how how small the story actually is, how big and diverse and rich it felt. Which is, so she did really well writing that. I really enjoyed it. And it was really cool. I don't think I've ever read like urban fiction before. I really enjoyed the urban fiction. I enjoyed, not going to like Minas Tirith, but going to like a shrimp shop. That's kind of cool on the corner. I really enjoyed that. You mentioned at the start of the book the events that kick off the thing about the two boyos trying to nick some Jade off a clan member. One of the fellas is called Barrow. And I don't know if it's meant to be played like this, but he comes off as great comic relief, because his whole shtick is that throughout the whole book he keeps popping up and he's always on the grind to try and get himself some Jade, but all of his schemes always just fall short, and he ends up like thinking he's done a great thing, and in fact it's actually disastrous, and then he falls out of favor of people. He almost came across as a bit Team Rocket-esque. like
Jesus.
dastardly villain who keeps trying to do bad things, but he's always foiled by their kind of incompetence at the last moment. And I just think it was great. And the book finishes with Barrow going to Lan's grave and doing a bit of grave robbing. And I just had like, it wasn't stated, but I was just kind of like, yeah, but Barrow, we all know this isn't going to go anywhere. Like, you're going to mess this up. Like, you're going to trip and fall, and all your jade is going to just fall into a river and go away or whatever. He was just great. I don't know if you read him as comic relief, but I did, and I loved it.
Not at all.
Oh no, I loved it. Like, it's like, I thought it was like dark. It was obviously dark comic relief because he ends up inadvertently killing Lan and stuff. But like, he just kept failing, and it was hilarious. And I liked it as well because like it brought a little bit of like, the whole book is obviously very serious. You know, it deals with serious matters of life and death. And I enjoyed this one character who that arc didn't seem to be all that serious and that weighty. He was a bit kind of comic relief for me. So I'm sorry you didn't read it as comic relief, because that was like highlighted a book. I really enjoyed it.
Who was your favorite character?
Other
than Barrow.
Other than Barrow. Well, Barrow didn't really have much character development. Again, comic relief. But I'm torn. Like, they all have merit to them. They're all interesting. Like, even Hilo, like, I'll give you a proper answer in a second, but let me just go at it. Hilo, again, is the Horn. He's like the leader of the thugs. And he's presented as a very kind of like fiery, aggressive, like manly man. Like the muscle, you know? But even him throughout the book, like, he has moments of tenderness, of softness, of introspection, moments of like great insight and tactical cunning towards the end. And so he a very well developed, non-stereotypical character. And that kind of holds for all of them. Like, they're all like that. They all have things that they really enjoy. If I were to pick one, I think it would be a toss-up between Shay and Aitmada, who is the pillar of the Mountain Clan.
The main antagonist.
The main antagonist, because she's just like a boss. Like, this person, Aitmada, has like a bit girl bossy, I suppose, but like this person has like murdered people left, right, and center to get to where she is. Like a cunning tactician, like a skilled negotiator, all that sort of jazz. But she's not presented as being kind of like girl bossy in a way, or like that like hypersexualized sort of that sort of thing as well. She's just kind of presented as being like a normal person who's just like really, really astute, and she had to fight against prejudice within her clan because she's a woman. And like, I really vibe with Aitmada, even though she's a horrible human being. Shay would be the other option, because she gets a lot of play in this book, because I think her story is quite interesting with trying to distance herself. We hear more about her than anyone else, I think, and therefore she is immediately likable. But I think Aitmada probably tops it for me. What was yours?
Hilo.
Why Hilo?
Yeah, because, as you say, he's just presented as the muscle, and he's a hothead. But as you go on through the book, it's clear he has such depth to him, and he's totally sincere in his beliefs. Like, he is absolutely 100% sincere in his commitment to the family, and in his honor. And it's a totally different moral world from one I exist in, but it makes sense. And he's like, it's so consistent in him. And that, like, everything about him is commitment to the clan and commitment to honor. And he's, there's a point where it's clear he is willing to sacrifice himself just as much as he's willing to sacrifice those under him. And it would have been very easy to portray him as a hypocrite or a coward or a manipulator, but he isn't that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of his big faults as well, though, because he is fervent in his belief. Like, there's loads of times where he could have done with having just a small bit of Lan O'Shea's cunning. And like it's pointed out a lot throughout the book that the mountain are worried about Hilo, because Lan, the boss, he's a reasonable man who is willing to, who they think would be willing to merge the clans to prevent warfare. But again, Hilo being principled and, you know, willing to fight for those principles represents a serious problem. So I guess that just further proves your point that he's a very interesting character, that like his honor and his loyalty is both a huge plus and a massive minus for him in the context of the story, which is kind of dope.
But I think as well, he can't be bought out for that reason. Like he in the way that the other people will see, oh, you know, we can avoid conflict this way, and that's what the opponents are relying on. They're relying on, we want to avoid conflict and national interest, or we could buy some of them out. We could subvert some of them with money or with other inducements, and he's immune to that because, no, we have to be this way, and honor is important, and loyalty is important.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I just thought that was quite compelling.
Did you have like a least favorite character? Any duds in there for you?
Character-wise, no, I don't think there's anyone I didn't like. What about you?
I'm trying to run through them. Not really. No, because even when I think of like the more minor characters, they're all interesting. Like when Hilo's wife, or the person who becomes his wife throughout the course of the book, she's interesting because she's presented very much as a kind of like trad wife sort of thing, but like not at all. We find out, and is cunning and helps with the cause, has great ideas, is a tactician as well. Same with the Make brothers. I think of them and I'm kind of like, oh well, they were kind of crap characters, and then I think about the backstory they're given and their struggles throughout their lives and their positions in the clan as a result of the war, and I'm kind of like, there are no crap characters here. There really aren't, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, nearly all the characters are developed and interesting, which I think is really cool. It popped into my head there. One more thing on comic relief. Mm-hmm. The shrimp. Did you pick up on the shrimp? The shrimp was great. It was so fun.
No?
No, the constant references to shrimp. So at one stage in the book, a battle occurs and the mountain overtake. I think, is it the Twice Lucky? I think it's the Twice Lucky. It's like this...
The food shop, like the restaurant, yeah.
The restaurant, yeah. And it's ran by a chap called...
Well done, Bill.
And it's ran by a chap called Mr. Une. And Mr. Une makes really good shrimp, and like the mountain comes in, ransacks the place, and then the horn of the mountain, Gaunt Ash, sits down and he's like, prepare me some of your finest shrimp. And then he brings over shrimp, and there's this whole like scene where it's like, this truly is the most marvelous shrimp I have ever tasted. And then later on, when Hilo and Gaunt Ash like fight at the end, the culminating battle, they talk about the shrimp in the Twice Lucky again, and then the story ends with Hilo and them sitting in the Twice Lucky admiring the shrimp. It's like the shrimp got so much play, and I just loved it. Like these bloodthirsty fighters just like salivating over food. It's like, if I die now, I'll never be able to eat the shrimp out of the Twice Lucky, the finest shrimp in all of Jandoon. It was just great. So there was a really good balance for me anyways of like, again, real serious sort of clan warfare, interpersonal drama, and just these little like specklings of like sass and comedy throughout it that made it took the edge off this book taking itself a bit too seriously for me. It was a fun ride, which I very much enjoyed. And like bad people and monsters can also be hilarious. And Gaunt Ash was hilarious in that instance with his monologue about shrimp to Hilo as he tried to kill him. Wonderful. I have a point on the writing. Mm-hmm. Just a real quick one. This is one of the most vivid books we have reviewed on this podcast for me. I would assume, being a crap writer, that it's incredibly difficult to write wuxia and have it feel like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Like, yeah, to say like, oh, he leapt up the wall in a single bound or whatever, doesn't have the same feel as watching that on screen and seeing the physical thing of how that occurs. But whatever Fonda Lee did here, her writing was so evocative of that like it felt like I was watching a film like Crouching Tiger or something like that. It was so good. And then there was loads of points in it where I felt like she maybe dipped into like anime style tropes, where the writing was kind of evocative of kind of common anime sort of things, particularly when it comes to battle. And I really enjoyed that. There was one scene, one of the fights, I can't remember exactly which one, it was early in the book, where I think Hilo was fighting someone, or maybe it was Lan. Lan was fighting the person he ultimately got all the excess jade from that ended up killing him. And there was one line where she had like the opponent threw up a deflection wall, and then that sent Lan flying backwards. But he flew backwards in the the anime thing where you're kind of like you're in a solid stance and you're just like,
I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, and then you like the tarmac gets ripped up under your feet, and she wrote that in a way that was like really eloquent and in hardly any words immediately made me feel like I was watching an anime. And I think that's deliberate. I think it's deliberate. And it's really evocative of this sort of like, East Asian wuxia kind of vibe. She did a great job there. Like, it's so vivid. And like the town, the city as well. Like when there was various bits of the plot that occurred at feast days. Like I could smell the street food through her writing. I could smell it. It brought me back to being in Asia. Like just the dense mass of people and like street food out there and the smells of all the things. Her writing was exquisite without being dense or technical or anything. It was just beautiful. I absolutely loved it.
Cool.
What else have I got?
If you had to say kind of an analogous period to Earth history, what would you say it was set in?
So, I think this feels like a 20s sort of vibe. To me, with all the like motor cars and things. So I'm imagining a rapidly expanding Asian sort of environment, like akin to Korea, except with a sort of 20s vibe. Is how I imagine it. Why do you ask?
Just because I was curious, because I felt it was kind of 60s.
You thought it was 60s?
Yeah, because it's about a generation after a global war,
sure,
which is mentioned, followed by a period of decolonization, and there's a sort of implicit Cold War between the Aspensians and the Igatanians, and just like it's not much later than that, like, because people still use typewriters and send letters, and they don't have mobile phones, so it's probably not like 90s, and they have like phonographs rather than other means of musical media. So I felt that the Many Nations War was kind of analogous to World War II, and there's the issue of jade proliferation. Other countries trying to get jade for their spec ops military. Which felt like maybe a bit analogous to nuclear proliferation after the Second World War.
So I would agree with everything you just said, but it doesn't feel 60s to me.
There was motorbike gangs.
I mean, I guess. I don't know why I just think of Janloon as being like a roaring 20s sort of place, except, Asian.
Mad.
Yeah. It's mad. Just a brief tangent on time periods. I think maybe just me, or I think maybe others, time periods a bit weird for the last century. Like whenever I think 60s, right? But what I think is stereotypically 60s here in the West actually occurred kind of in the 70s, and the 60s aren't what I think the 60s is. So I always think of 60s being like hippie sort of thing, free love and that sort of thing. But I remember looking into this a while ago and being like, that's actually more the 70s. and the 60s are more kind of like I guess Mad Men-esque or something like that. I feel like my decades are like shifted a little bit. Do you feel this? Do you think others feel this?
I know what you mean. Like the hippie thing was very much late 60s. So, you know, there's a whole section of it there where that wasn't relevant.
I guess what I'm saying is that things can overlap decade delineations.
Yeah.
And that throws me off a little bit. Yeah.
And like, you know, the 90s lasted from 1988 until 2001. From 1989. The 90s as kind of a cultural period starts with the fall of the Berlin Wall and ends with September 11th. Like, it's not like the calendar 90s, but the 90s as kind of a cultural concept and as a period in the West is bigger than what they are in the calendar.
I never considered it ending at 9/11, but that would make sense because 9/11 was such a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
That it would trigger a sort of change in kind of cultural state. Do you ever think about? Sorry, we're off topic here. Just brief.
On this podcast.
Who would have thunk it, eh? Let's talk more shrimp. No, do you ever think about what the sort of like? Because, you know, it can be kind of difficult to identify the culture stew you are currently stewing in. And it's only with retrospect that you're kind of like, oh, the 80s were all like, you know, shoulder pads, glitter and glam rock, that sort of thing, right? Do you ever think about what's going to define the decade that we are currently in? Because every time I think about that, I'm always kind of like, I don't know, like it feels like we're in like a idiomatic like decade. We don't have anything we can point to and be like, this is the thing that's going to make this decade stand out amongst the others. And I'm sure there is something, but just again, when you're in it, it's hard to identify. Any thoughts on
the pandemic might?
Well, the pandemic, yeah, but I mean, I guess I'm thinking more about like music, dress, those type of things, you know. Like if I were to set a film and want to give it the vibes of like the 2010s, what are those vibes? Like, what does that look like? You know, the 70s has a very sort of set aesthetic. 20s is another one, 80s another one, even 90s has a set of sort of aesthetic. But I feel like we're kind of aestheticless at the moment.
I think everyone feels that in their own time, though.
But that's what I'm saying. Do you ever like try and take yourself out of the time we're currently in and think about what might be remembered from this time aesthetic wise in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what have you got?
Thriller novels that are like single color, and a silhouette of a man on the front. That's a real like the last 15 years book cover design that wasn't very common beforehand and was massively prolific like 5 years ago.
Wow, I guess I missed all of that. I
like,
thought you were joking.
All the child books kind of look sort of like that.
Wow.
And then loads of others have I don't know if he originated it, but loads of others that are similar to it.
Huh. Do you have anything on music? I can identify something with music. I wonder what people realize.
In the 2010s, there was all that like stomp stomp hey stuff. You know, Mumford and Sons and the Lumineers and guys with waistcoats and beards and mandolins.
Oh God, I love when you get exasperated. It's great. I guess I know I specifically asked 2010s, but I guess the current time period, I feel like as much as maybe people hate to admit this, I think mumble rap has left a real dent on musical culture. And I think even things that aren't considered mumble rap draw on the mumble rap aesthetic an awful lot.
The way like triplet flow was the thing of the 2010s.
A little bit like that, yeah. Like now sort of like, you know, the aesthetic of kind of like I am pseudo drugged up and slurring my words at you in this song is kind of, I think that might be very indicative of music of this time period. But books with a dude on the front, monocolored. I would never, not in a month of Sundays would have expected you to say that. That is something else. I have some research to do. Anyway, back to Jade City. I have a couple more things that I would like to point out.
Cool.
Or actually, let me do a meta discussion. So at the start of this book, I had a little bit of like an eye roll moment when Jade was mentioned. And it brought me back to Sanderson's, what's the book? You're going to have to remind me with the metal.
Mistborn.
It brought me back to that, where I'm kind of like, an object we have IRL that is not magical, somehow has magic in this like alt setting, which I find a bit hard to kind of wrap my head around. It breaks my suspension of disbelief when when Sanderson goes, pewter makes you jump high, and I'm like, no. And then this had a similar thing where it's like, Jade gives you all these magic powers, and I'm like, no. So I was primed to kind of not like it, but the Jade mechanic made this book what it is. Like, if it was anything else, this book would just not have worked, so that's fine. But I don't know, I think there are times where it's like, we don't need a thing to give magic to people. Like, we kind of sort of have this IRL with like perfect pitch, for example. Like, that is like a pseudo magical gift that some people just have for reasons we don't know. It's just like they're just born that way. You could just have a scenario where like magic is part of just being a human, and you are born with an adeptitude for it or not. Like perfect pitch, like Avatar, not the blue people, the other one. It's just kind of like, you're born with it because, like, I don't know, more sensitivity to the spirit realm or something like that, which is basically the same as like having musical abilities here. It's just you were born with it. And I don't know, I was yeah, like I said, when I saw the Jade stuff, I was like, oh no, here we go. But it worked. But in general, I kind of like my magic to just be it exists sort of thing. Agree, disagree? Hot debate. Is this Robots 2.0?
No strong feeling on it, to be honest. Like, you know, there's room for either.
Sure, yeah.
And like you couldn't rewrite this book with that change.
That's exactly it. And I was paying attention to that as I went through, and was like, oh no, like, I can't have what I want here. It just would not work. Because it's not just a source of magic; it's a source of like geopolitical power. And it's a resource, and it is a mineral, a real, like, this thing costs money as well as it makes magic. So yeah, you couldn't do it. There was another thing here. There's a line, a bit of lore here. They have this saying, "Gold and jade never together."
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice reframing of kind of absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the idea of that if you are jaded, you are a magician, but you're also a wusha godfather magician, but you also should not hold political power, because that would be absolute power corrupting absolutely. And then I love the way that there's this whole like ISO code that kind of like dictates how these clans, like an honor-based code system that dictates how these clans function, such that this motto, gold and jade never together, is actually upheld for the most part over a long period of time. And I really enjoyed that. It was just a very nice little bit of flavor.
Yeah, I like that. Again, the depth of the implications and the ramifications of this existing in the world. That was an example of it being well thought through.
Yeah. And we see it bear out because stuff like no jaded members in the government.
Yeah.
And the government ostensibly control the jade supply, so there's kind of like there's meant to be a check on the various powers there. And also another thing that I thought was cool was they have this K-Con Jade Alliance. So it's like this one, I read it as like almost like a public company almost.
Yeah.
That controls the Jade, and there's like a rule very much akin to German football where no one can own more than 50% of the K-Con Jade Alliance. So you have each of the clans have like a vested interest, like financial interest in this, and there's a whole web of checks and powers, or checks and balances that keep things from getting under control. And I guess a lot of the
in theory.
In theory. And I guess a lot of the tension in this book is that the mountain has decided this is crap. We just want to seize control. they want to just seize control of everything and become what was once the old one mountain society, like one clan to rule over all of Caicon and become the dominant political force both on the island and in the world as a whole, as we currently see it.
What's the thing with German football? No one person can own more than 50% of the club?
Yeah, it's called the 50+1 rule. Now, admittedly, I don't know that much about it, but they have laws in place that a billionaire can't just come in and own the club. Oh, yeah, no, that's it.
Fans control 50+1, yeah.
Yeah, fans control 50+1. Yeah.
I knew there was something about fans.
Yeah, so no one moneyed interest can come in and take over more than 49% of the club. It's always going to be fan-owned, which is class. And just, if I may, just real quickly, I find it kind of hilarious that such a system breeds mad wealth inequality, and I don't really understand how this occurs, because in German football you have like basically one team and all the rest just don't win things. You have this one team, Bayern Munich, who like I think they've won the title like 10 years running. Like every year they just win the title, even though all the clubs have this sort of like pseudo-socialist fan-owned thing going on where money shouldn't buy you power. But for whatever reason, just German football is set up in such a way that even with these checks and balances, just power accumulates at the top in an odd way that is akin to the more kind of like capitalist sort of English football division. And I find it really fascinating. But no one else cares about this, so I'm going to shut up now. Next point on Jade City, Bill.
I think I have made all of my points. Let me just look at my notes. Yeah, I think that's kind of everything. I've started reading the sequel.
Oh, you have? Well, actually, let me interrogate that in a second.
Okay.
I have one final point, and that is, I think the core theme of this book is acceptance. I don't know if that's how you read this book as well, but I think this is basically a big giant character study on all the ways in which we strive for acceptance in the world. Because you have Lan, the boss guy, trying to be like his grandfather, be accepted in the eyes of his grandfather as a leader of the clan. Later on, you have Hilo trying to be accepted by his grandfather, but also by everyone else as a leader, because they see him as the warrior and not the leader. And there's like a striving for acceptance. There is, with Shay, there's like her trying to accept herself in life outside of the clan, and then having to accept the idea that she can't completely decouple from the clan and she has to accept that life. There's the kid Andon, who we didn't really talk about here, but it plays a pivotal role in the story. His sort of like being accepting himself as a call, and then eventually as a non-magic user, accepting that that's not a path for him given his history. And then you can go through each and every single character, and it's all a story on acceptance. Aipmada, the idea of like striving to be accepted in a male dominated world. The Makes being accepted by the No Peak clan after being mountain traitors. The whole thing is just like, like I said, like a character study in acceptance. And it was very obvious to me, to the point where I'm kind of like, every time a new character came along, I'm like, how will this person struggle to be accepted in various things? And I'm wondering, did you get this, or is this just my lunatic rantings?
I did not pick up on that in that way, but I would struggle to say exactly what to put the theme in a single word. So perhaps I'd have to think about it.
Okay. Now tell me about book 2.
So book 2, it starts about 16 months later, I think, and it opens with Barrow robbing a grave.
How, as far as you've read, has Barrow made any more mad missteps?
See, I hadn't really been thinking of it in the same terms, but he's been doing okay, I guess.
Has he?
He's been doing okay, yeah. He's been doing okay. Putting in the grind.
He's on the grind. He's got that grind set, and it is going nowhere. God
Sigma
bless it.
male grind set. The scope of it expands a bit more. So you see more about what's going on in Aspensia and in Kakanese communities in Aspensia, and the effect of, or the place that Kikon plays on the global stage. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm enjoying it very much.
The book is called Jade War, is it not?
Jade War, yeah. And the third one I think is called Jade Legacy. And I just saw today that there's a short story, I think, set in the same setting, but I'm not sure whether it's before or after the trilogy. Called The Jade Setter of Janloon.
That's interesting. You really did like this if you were compelled enough to read the second book. Interesting. I had the same thought. I was like, I should really go read the second book. But then I was like, let me read this book again in prep for this podcast. Because much like the films, I like to do things twice. And this one was so easy to chew through that I was like, I can easily get this done twice. Now, that being said, I literally finished my second reading. I put the book down about 20 minutes before we recorded this podcast. I was up at 6 a.m. and listened to about 2 hours of recording to get it done in time. So I think given that we are not going to have another book review episode for a little while anyways, so we go back to standard episode, I think I might download book 2 and possibly book 3 and have a listen to them.
Cool.
Because like you, I am intrigued to see where this goes. I really am. And I'm very intrigued about that Andon character, who we didn't actually mention that much. Because I'm intrigued what happens with him. He has shunned the jaded lifestyle currently at the end of this book, and I can't imagine that that's a thing that would remain. Because the cool thing here is that he has like a bit of a bond with Shay. And Shay went through this idea of like, I don't want to do Jade, be part of the clan. I don't want to be jaded, but then was forced to be jaded. And I can imagine Andon going through a similar story arc where he's like, I am dangerous if I'm jaded. So he gives up and shuns Jade. But then later on, he could realize that for the greater good, I'm just going to have to try and make this sacrifice. And then I could see him and Shay having to have a lot of like deep and meaningful talks with one another to try and navigate this sort of transition for him. Like he may need to become the monster that he thinks he will become in order to achieve some sort of great victory, which I think is cool and has very many kind of like tantalizing tendrils running through that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Jade City by Fonda Lee.
Cool.
Do we have anything in closing? I always find it really hard to end these shows. We're just kind of like, are we done now? I guess we are.
I think that is it. I don't think I have any further points.
Okay. Great book. Strongly suggest people reading it. Strongly suggest people reading it. All right. So as mentioned earlier in the show, but I'm just going to say it again. This is a fairly short episode. Next time we record, it's going to be back to a full-on proper episode where we have world building, follow-up, green room, all that sort of jazz. Be a more meaty, 1.5, 2 hour podcast. All right. Thanks so much for listening, folks. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. Until next time, Edgar out.